Good evening, everybody. Welcome to the Rockpile podcast tonight, where the first edition of the Beyond the Game podcast airs tonight here on the Rockpile. If you're following me across social media, please make sure give it a like and subscribe button. If you have any comments, questions tonight for Jim before I bring him on, please put them in the comment box. I'll try to bring over as many as I can tonight. I'm excited to talk to Jim Tracy, the co-founder of Legacy Telecommunications, author, speaker, and the host of the Grampion podcast. We'll ask Jim about that and much more. And I just got a chance to interact with Jim for a few minutes, and I can't thank him enough. This is a little bit going out of my comfort zone, as many that follow the Mohawk Valley Sports Watch and also follow the Rockpile and all the podcasts that are on the platform. I appreciate everybody taking the time here tonight. So without further ado, I'm not going to keep him waiting any longer. Let me bring Jim on with me here. Let me switch this up. How are you, my friend?
Hey, man, I'm better than I deserve. How are you?
I'm doing fantastic. I appreciate you taking the time.
On. Oh, thank you for having me on. I'm honored.
Yeah, this is, as I was telling you before we jumped on, this is a little bit outside of my comfort zone. I love talking to people. My biggest thing on my platforms, Jim, are really listening to stories from whether it's sports, entrepreneurs like yourself, business owners, you name it. I love listening to stories. So this was really a great opportunity to have you on tonight. So again, I appreciate it.
Awesome. Hey, we're both blessed.
No, we are. I definitely will admit that we definitely are. So Jim, let's get into if you can just share a little bit about yourself, a little bit of the background for the listeners out there tonight.
All right. Born into a big family out in rural South Dakota, and was a welder up in northern Minnesota, and found and fell in love with this beautiful girl. I asked her father, I said, hey, I don't want to get married. And he said, good, where are you going to college? I'm like, anywhere you want, man. If that's the price of entry, I am in. And so we went, and I bartended my way through college, went through about 3 different careers. And one day my son came home. He was 17 years old. He had been working building cell towers. And he said, hey, come on out to my job site. Because I had done that kind of work when I was a kid. And I went out there, and I was like terrified because I knew someone was going to get hurt there if they kept doing things they were. So I stuck my spurs into him pretty good. And one night he came home and he said, hey, Dad, if you think you're so smart, let's go do it ourselves. And I'm like, okay. So we started Legacy Telecommunications and went from 2 employees to a couple of hundred, and then into private equity, where I went to almost 1,000 employees, and sold that business and come out. And now I do keynote speaking, writing some books, that kind of thing, and hopefully impacting people. You know a lot about that, Rocky.
Yeah, and that's hopefully what we'll do tonight is impact some people. And I always say if there's people that are listening that even if they take away 1 or 2 things, not just from me, from you, or anybody that I've had on my shows, it means something to me. So I want you to start with, you started the business though in your garage.
Yeah.
So talk to us a little bit about that journey, because that's a fascinating story for somebody that started from their garage and built an empire like yourself.
Yeah. We were probably a little bit too stupid and too desperate to know any better. and so I cleaned out my retirement account. I had some management incentive funds that had been earned, and I cashed everything in, and I bet it on me and my kid. And we couldn't go rent an office. I mean, so I worked 2 jobs for about a year while we were doing that. And we would do the sales stuff at night and work a regular job during the day. And, after a while, we started getting contracts with some of the national carriers, and lo and behold, we hit the timing right. And as the cell business began to explode, they needed people who wanted to work at elevation and, build cellular communications infrastructure.
So Jim, my podcast, The Rock Pile, I like to talk a lot about climbing the rock pile and chasing dreams. And I've been a guy that I've always had a boy, a ball, and a dream, because I've grown up around sports my entire life. My dad was a longtime high school coach in the area, 35 years plus. My sisters coached field hockey and played field hockey at the Division I level.
Oh, wow.
I've coached it at the high school level and played Division I football myself. And one of the things I've always said is, don't be scared to chase your dreams. And that was one of the reasons why, when I was reading through your bio and some of your stories of how you started, what would be some of your thoughts you would share with, guys like myself and anybody listening tonight that are chasing a dream?
Yeah. Number one, there's going to be a lot of people out there who are going to say, it's probably not a good idea. There's probably not a good time. It's probably not, you probably don't have enough money. You're probably not smart enough. You may not have enough talent. I mean, there's all kinds of people out there who are going to tell you it's just not a good idea. And it's not their dream. It's not their energy. It's not up to them. And frankly, if you think you can do it, you're 90% of the way there.
Yeah, and that's exactly right. And there's times you're going to get knocked down, and you got to be able to get back up again and deal through, some adversity. And I thought another one of your stories that was fascinating. You dealt with a pretty significant skiing accident.
Yeah. I I was up in northern Idaho at a place called Schweitzer, and I was skiing with one of my grandsons, and I came off a mogul, and my leg was actually probably really straight when it should have been bent, and I came down and I crushed my tibial plateau. I mean, I yard sailed it, man. There, I got hats over there, skis over there, goggles back there, poles somewhere else, and I got, but I knew something was pretty bad right away. This lady and this guy come around. They put the X on the skis over my head, come around behind me. So they're now in front of me, and they're like, "Hey, man, what can we do?" And I'm like, "Could you make my leg face the right way, please?" and so I got the toboggan ride down the mountain, the ride of shame, and I went to the dock, and it was about an hour and a half ride to get to the a good emergency room, and they said, "Hey." Well, I told them, I said, "Hey, you're going to wait. The swelling's going to go down. You're going to pin it. We're going to set the leg and everything will be fine." And they said, "Well, Mr. Tracy, here's the way it's going to work. If we don't operate within an hour, you're going to lose your leg." And I had what they call compartment syndrome. So I got a rebuilt knee, and they said, "Hey, man, I woke up. I woke up, and this is the only thing I remember about the entire day. I woke up and I was like sobbing, and I'm pulling on my sheets and I'm pulling them out of the bottom, and I see my toes, and I just start giggling like a little kid. That's the only thing I remember about that entire day is I saw my toes. So yeah, it was a pretty rough go. They said you're probably not you're never going to run again. You're probably not going to walk right. So I didn't accept that really.
So my question is, you've been back on the slopes at all?
Yes, I have, as a matter of fact. And well, they said, you're not going to walk right. And so we started walking. I currently walk between 12 and 15,000 steps a day just to prove them wrong. And then, because I can't, I got to take the running a little easy because I'm on somebody else's knee. But I've done a couple 5Ks and some terrain races and Spartan type races and things like that. So do it with my grandkids. We're going to get 7 grandkids and me are going to run a 5K terrain race on July 12th.
Well, and speaking of the grandkids, I know you get sick of the question probably about the Grampion. How'd you get the name? And I've obviously listened to some of your podcasts, so I know
Yeah.
where you got the name, but I think it's a great story. You want to share how you got the name?
Sure, I'd love to, man. Um, I was playing a card game with with my grandson Wes, out at a lake house, and I beat him. And Wes is like, he's got competitive juice like none other, right? And so he stands up and he's like, "You're not Grandpa anymore." And I was like, "What? You're not a champion either." And I was like, "Man, I just beat you." And he said, "You're Grampion." He got a smile on his face. He says, "You're a Grampion." And it kind of stuck, and I really like it. So I'll
Yeah,
take it. I'll keep it.
that's a great name. That's a great thing too with and so many grandkids too. God bless you for that. So
Yeah.
Jim, I'm a VP of a transportation company, and one of the things that we really struggle with, and I went to a job where I didn't know much about the industry, and I've tried to build, as I did in football, you try to build a culture. You got to
Yeah.
come in and change things up. And I think one of the fascinating things about your background is you talk about how you went from a 2-man crew to, a 20-man crew, and you built a culture. You built
Hmm.
a winning team there. What are some
Yeah.
things you can share as far as how'd you do that? And I think one of the stories I read about you that again was fascinating is I think it was, you didn't know it was somebody's birthday, you didn't recognize somebody's name, and you do all these birthday cards, you write personal messages. Talk
Yeah.
to us a little bit if you can. How did you build that team?
Well, number one, when you start with two, it's easy to know what's going on, and then you build that to a crew. And then, in this case, my son took that crew out in the field, and I went and got more work. So now I'm with them in the morning, and I may be with them in the evening when they come home, but I'm not with them all day long anymore. So it's tougher to get to know them. So you have to communicate on a bigger level, on an immediate level. Every time you get a chance, you have to make sure that they know what the game is. I mean, if put it in your terms, man, if I'm a football coach and they're out for 8 hours a day playing baseball, I'm not doing a very good job.
Right.
Not that I don't, I like baseball, but man, if you're going to play ball and you're going to play in a football team, then you got to know your position. So as one crew turned into two crews, and two crews turned into uh, then we had separate divisions where this one is doing telecom, and this one's doing electrical power, and this one's doing generator work, and now you've got put it again in sports terminology. Now you got offense, you got defense, you got
Right.
special teams, you got other coaches that you got to bring in. You all got to speak the same language. And one of the things in American business today that we've forgotten is mentorship, apprenticeship type programs where I teach you what I do so that I can replace myself. And there's a lot of fear out in the marketplace. And I don't think there's a lot of room for that, especially when you're grinding and hustling and trying to win championships.
Yeah,
And it,
Jim, I think I don't mean to cut you off. I think you hit it
yeah,
right on the head because I think one of the things that people struggle with is, first of all, as a coach, and even my day today, I always say I'm a coach no matter if it's on a field or in the office, but you have to
exactly.
coach people differently, right? Not
Yeah,
everybody reacts the same way, but I feel like you hit it on the head when you say some people are scared to do that because they're worried that that person's going to take their job. And I say, listen, if I teach them the right way and they can take my job, then that makes me even more successful.
yeah. Then you're moving up a level.
Right.
See, nobody can move up a level unless they have an adequate replacement. And in good theory, I should surround myself with people who are better, faster, stronger, smarter.
Mhm.
And if I do that, then they build me up as I build them up. Because my son is an example, obviously the number two in our business, started when he was 18. He was working for guys in their 40s and 50s as clients, but he was leading people who were older than he was. And so he had to come to me and say, "Hey, this happened today. Like, how would you handle that?" And I didn't, there's an old Bible saying, it says, if a child asks you for a fish, you're going to hand him a rock. Um, yeah, I don't think so. And part and parcel of that is in American business, the people who work for us don't anymore know that we love them. There's a guy here at Boise State, and he coaches football, and he's very open about the fact that he loves his players. And the first time in program history last year, what do? They're headed for the college football playoffs for the very
Yep.
first time in history, and it's all based on the fact that they know that coaches got their back. So when players started shifting teams and stuff, his players pretty much stuck there. So I'm pretty impressed. Spencer
Yeah.
Danielson is his name.
Yes, yes. I followed Boise very well. My wife's dad
Yeah.
is from Idaho.
Blue
Um,
turf, baby.
that's
Smurf
right.
turf, baby.
That's
Bleed
right.
blue.
Yep. I think they got on the map years ago. I think it was the Fiesta Bowl against Oklahoma when they ran the two trick plays. I think the Statue of Liberty and another play, and they pulled off a huge upset. But great
Yeah.
program. But
Yeah.
Jim, the other thing you talk about too is the respect part. And I think, even as us coaches, I think you got to earn that respect. So one of the things that I've done in prior jobs has been I've always rolled up my sleeves and I'm going to go out there and I'm going to go do the job firsthand so people can see me doing it. And I think even in sports, those coaches like you're talking about that earn the respect of their players, it
Yeah.
goes a long way because they'll run through a wall for you. And it's the same in a workplace, right? If you respect your mentor and it says a little bit, and I think it goes a long ways, right?
Yeah, and two, I think one of the things that when we look at the generations in the workplace, right now there are 6 generations in the workplace, and some of them view respect differently. Like, I'll give you a phrase that will resonate with younger people. You disrespected me. Well, actually, I think that respect having a two-way street means sometimes old people like this guy, they need to give a little respect, sometimes even before it's earned. And what does that cost you? Nothing. Nothing. Um, However, it's like planting a seed and throwing a little fertilizer and a little water on it, and then craft expectations that are really high, and then communicate them so that people know that's what's expected of them. It's going to change everything. I did something called the Culture Revival Blueprint, and I work with businesses on a regular basis, and I show them what happens when you craft a culture, and I give them a blueprint, basically like building a house. Here's what happens when you
Hmm.
build a culture where people love where they work. I mean, isn't that what we're looking for? Is that what we want?
Yeah, and I think we're all in, even in my world today. I mean, retention's huge for us, right? Trying to retain our
Oh yeah.
employees. But one of the other things too I find fascinating too is I feel like the younger generation um, doesn't want to put the time in as some of the older generation, right? I know you talk about the generational gaps and a lot of your keynotes speaking that you do. Talk to
Yeah.
us a little bit about that.
Okay. Um, I think that so my grandpa, I wrote a book called Building Men. It's coming out in June, and it starts the very first chapters with my grandpa. And you know what my grandpa said about my dad's generation? They dance funny, they listen to weird music, they are lazy, and they're never gonna make anything of themselves.
Bingo.
There's the greatest generation talking about the generation that went to World War II as a silent generation. And then the silent generation, they talk about the hippies. You know what they said? They got long hair, hippie, pinko, dope smoking, don't care about nothing, anti-religious, pick a detrimental comment, and guess what? It's probably true for both generations. And then you get me. That was me, the boomers, the hippies. And then what do we say? Those millennials aren't worth a sour roll of at toilet paper. And they listen to
Absolutely.
funny music it goes on and on. Every generation has a gap. The question is if you, as the older generation, are open to bridging that gap. See, I got 116 years of experience between my grandpa and my grandkids. I got along with all of them. And why is that? If there's a generation gap, isn't there one of those that I shouldn't get all the way down to alphas? Isn't there one
Right.
I shouldn't get along with?
I feel, and that's a great point. I feel too, the other thing is, and again, sports in the business world is the ones that can adapt. Like some of the old style coaches that like I'll use my dad as a great example. My dad was the old school, very strict. When I started coaching with him, I was kind of the young guy that came in with all the fancy offense, and he was that old
Yeah.
school. I'm going to get in the I formation and I'm going to run the ball between the tackles. And one of the things I've always said about my dad, and again, I say this in the workplace today, is those folks that have been adaptable to change
Uh-huh.
have been the ones that have been able to manage through the way things are now versus the way things were years ago. And I
Yeah.
really believe that because some people just don't want to change. And I think that's huge if you're adaptable to be able to change.
Adapt, improvise, and overcome. Even the special forces in the military have adopted that mantra. So you are spot on, man. If you cannot spot where you need to change, I mean, if you're going to go to Chicago from Boise and you want to go via Dallas, you could probably get there. It's going to take you longer, but unless you recognize, or if you've got a car, but you could also take a jet, one's going to be faster. I mean, is either one right? Well, yeah. I mean, in essence, but you got to look at your mission profile. What do we want to overcome? How do we want to do it?
One of the questions I wanted to ask is when you look back on where you started, your life at, your business at, even your personal life and to where you are now, did you ever think you'd grow it and build it and be this successful?
No way. No way. So I was in the second grade, and Sister Elzir took me home. Or actually, she brought my mom into school, and she said, "Jim here, he's got a math problem. He doesn't understand mathematics." And I couldn't learn times tables. I stuttered a bit, and so they actually recommended that they send me. In these days, there was actually a state-sponsored school for retarded children. It was about 2 hours from our house, and they wanted to send me there. And my mom, bless her heart, she said, "No, that's not happening. We will take care of our own." And in many ways, that little turn. I mean, I wasn't a genius at math. I'm still not. I have overcome the stuttering, and I'm very grateful for that. I'm not the sharpest tool in the shed, but you know what? I'm not going to get outworked. I refuse to be outworked.
And who have been and that's awesome. That's what I tell my kids today the same thing is get out there and work hard and don't let anybody outwork you because you can't coach that. You can
Yeah.
coach with talent, but Jim, who have been some mentors for you that's
Oh
helped you out
boy.
in your career?
There is there's 22 chapters in that book, and every one of them is someone who is they impacted me with a character trait. And there's even more people, but there's 22 sections where I say this is a character trait that impacted me in such a significant way. I got to tell you about the guy or the guys who did it, and so that's where Building Men actually came from. But if I think about it, we talk about hard work. There's a guy by the name of Tom Lundell who started a manufacturing business, bootstrapped it from with his dad, so a family business. And those two guys were incredibly helpful to me as my first job out of college. And I remember Tom looking at me and saying, "Hustle takes no talent.
Hmm.
Hustle takes no talent." He said, "You get up before they do, you care more than they do, you drive farther than they do. Why they're checking into their hotel room, you're driving to the next town, and you're writing all your reports for the day, so you remember what you promised, and then you beat them out of bed in the morning and get up and do it again." And my grandpa was a huge, huge factor as when I was a little kid. And there's just so many people. There's a teacher by the name of John Devine. And if people don't think teachers and coaches can make a difference,
Yeah.
uh, uh, go look at what John Devine and the impact that he had in my life. And there's like I said, there's 22 of them. So I don't get any credit for me. I get credit for being dumb enough to listen and smart enough to follow instruction.
Well, how cool was it to, because again, I'm a big family guy and I got an opportunity to coach with my dad. And I say to this day, that's still one of the best moments in my life, getting a chance to work with him. How special was it for you to work with your son?
Wow. We still work together, even this many years later. We have a real estate business and an agricultural business that we built. That's the side, and that's what he runs now. And um, I always tell people if you're going to start a business, start a family business, and start it with someone who you would trust with your wife and your checkbook. And and that seems to be for me. That's the winning formula for business is to make sure that you entirely and completely trust the person. Yeah, they care more about you than as my son's line. "Hey, Dad, I care more about you than about money." Isn't that
Oh,
cool?
that's very cool.
That
That's a
really only
special
comes from
relationship.
family. Yeah.
So, Jim, the books that you have two books, right? You have the Building Men one. You said that's coming out June, July.
June 3rd, they're putting it out in time for Father's Day. As a matter of fact, yeah,
That's
Rocky,
perfect timing.
Coach, I got the first copies in the mail, my author copies today. So you're hitting me like I'm on top of the world.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Congratulations. So
Thank you.
what went into writing that book? Where'd you come up with the name and what went into this?
The name actually came from Brian, my partner. He was doing he's my son, and he was doing a interview with a industry trade magazine or something. Anyway, they said, so you've grown the business, and now it's like so many more people. What do you do like from day to day now? And he goes, well, I used to build towers. I built guide towers. I built self-supporting towers. I built mono pole towers. I built glue lam towers. There's not a tower that I really can't build, and I'm really good at it. But now I build men, and I build men who build towers, and that's where the name Building Men and the book title came from. So, tip of the
Yeah,
cap to Rye.
yeah, that's pretty cool. So, Jim, you talk all over the place. You've been a keynote speaker at a lot of different types of places. What have been some of the more difficult questions that your audience has asked you?
Yeah, hey, when we first, I think you probably heard, I did a company-wide podcast just because I that was a thing where I walked down to the warehouse. I didn't know somebody, so I started talking to them, and I told the guys who were taking care of it. I said I want to do it live, and they said, "Oh man, you can't do it live. Somebody's going to ask you questions you don't want to answer." And I said, "I think I can handle it." So it was about the third week or so. A guy comes on the phone. He says, "Hey Jim, I got a question for you," because they would raise their hand on electronically somehow, and I'm not really a tech guy, so so they would raise their hand, and he said, "Jim, I got a question." I said, "Hey man, what's the question?" He said, "How much money do you make?" And I said, "Wow, that's an awesome question. How much money do you make?" And he said, "Well, I don't think I want to tell you with everybody listening." And I'm like, "Me too. Next question." So, but a lot of times when we do keynotes, the real questions come afterwards, because only two things happen after keynote. Number one, somebody comes and says, "I love you, and I love what you said because," and I did one where a guy came up and said, "I listened to you a year ago, and I started a business based on what you said, and I now have 17 employees, and we're positive cash, and we're profitable." And I look at that and I'm like, dude, he's living the American dream.
Yeah.
That's the first kind. The second kind is when people come up to you and they say, "Hey," and it depends upon what your keynote is on. Sometimes I do, like motivational, like get off your butt keynotes, which are really cool.
Yep.
But sometimes I say, you know what? Embrace uncertainty, because the only thing that that's going to happen is change. And sometimes people come up to me after that, and I've literally had people crying on my shoulder saying, "I can't take any more of this. I need some hope. I need some help. What do I do?" And so you get to act a little bit as a counselor. But here again, um, if I'm doing my job as a keynote speaker, I've got to interact with that audience. I've got to let them know. Like there's one guy in specific where I'm like, "Okay, here's the deal." Scribble it down. I'm like, "I'm going to stay an extra night. Here's the hotel I'm at. Come and meet me at the hotel for breakfast, and we're going to work through this." And when you don't, sometimes you don't have a whole bunch of extra time or travel money to do that, but sometimes you do, and you have to take those opportunities, because those are the life changing moments. And if you're just a speaker, I mean, there's a lot. You could get a lot of celebrity speakers. You could probably get, uh, you could probably get Tom Brady to come in and give a great speech, but he's not going to have time to meet a guy who's down on his luck and deep in trouble, and his wife's leaving him, and he's too hard on the bottle. And those are the kind of people that come up to me afterwards and say, "I need some hope." And so, yeah, a lot of my hard questions are finding answers for people who need a little hope. And that's what we do.
Do you have, one speaking engagement that you did of a time that stands out to you that was, that sticks with you to this day, that you still think about it? Maybe it was years ago.
Wow. Wow. Yeah, I have a lot of them. I guess the first time I stood up in front of a trade association where they're all my peers, um, you know, uh, when I got to be chairman of our trade association, you have to stand up and speak in front of a group of people, and when they're 2,000 people and they're in the same business as you are, and they're sitting in the crowd in front of you, That's enough to make you tingle a little bit because, and it's not, I found if you are genuine and authentic when you talk to people, they root for you. I mean, they want you to win. It's like
Yep.
having, okay, it's like having a home team, okay? But when you walk on stage and are inauthentic or arrogant or kind of a know-it-all, now you've got the away crowd at a home event. And you don't want that, man. You want to take this audience, and it's your job to bring them into your world, to bring them into your arena. And if you can do that, that's where the magic happens, man. When you're talking, even if there's 2,500 people in the audience, when you're talking to every one of them, it's a huge difference. It's a game changer.
And Jim, I want to go back to the team piece because again, I think I was either reading or watching one of your podcasts where you talked a little bit about recognition, and I know you had wrote some. I think it was birthday cards or personal cards for people, and to get to know their names and stuff. But talk to us just how important recognizing individuals are in the workplace. Because let's be real, we all like it attaboy every once in a while, right?
Yeah. When Here again, I got over 100 employees, and I thought I need to do a better job of touching these people. And it was primarily men out in the field and primarily women in the office. And so but I decided at one point that, man, I gotta do a birthday card for my people. I gotta let them know that I wish them a happy birthday, if nothing else. So I literally would, at one time I was doing like 160 birthday cards a year, and they're all handwritten, they're all hand addressed, they're all sent to someone with a note about how they affected me in that year, or they affected their team in that year, or whatever it is. You got to find something positive to say about anybody in your company.
Yeah, every little positive helps, right? Move it forward a little bit.
Hmm.
Um, so, Jim, for somebody, whether it's a business or just an individual person that might be struggling, and again, we all chase that dream sometimes of hey, I'm going to be the next Dick Vitale broadcasted on ESPN, or the next big CEO. But let's be real. It takes a lot to get to the top.
Uh-huh.
What would be some of your advice, words of wisdom for some people that are chasing it, that have dealt with a lot of adversity?
When the doc told me that he might have to take my leg off, that was a pretty big shock. Um, and it threw me into a little bit of a tailspin. But then he asked my son. He said, "How'd you guys get down here? I mean, like, you're here with him?" Like, he thought that they flew me down in a helicopter, and then when he found out they didn't fly me down in a helicopter, he said, "Well, did you follow the ambulance?" He goes, "No, man, we rode in my truck." And the doc looked at me and goes, "He hasn't had any painkillers?" And I'm like, "No, I had a couple aspirin up at the up at the mountain, but it's kind of hurting." And he looked over at my son and he said, "Your dad is one tough,
Yep.
fill in the blank, three letters." and and when I look at that, um, I look at I knew Ryan was going to take care of me. I knew the doc was going to take care of me. So you got to have a little faith. And then I went up, then they tell me I'm not going to be able to stand on my foot. I can't put any, I got my bone, I got some cadaver bone, I got some plastic bone, I got some steel bone, or some steel in my leg. And they're like, "You cannot touch your foot to the ground for 90 days. That's a really
That's
long
tough.
time.
Yeah.
Yeah. So as I moved around, all of a sudden I had to realize that, like, I mean, when I first got home, I couldn't even go to the bathroom. I had to, like, had somebody to help, because you can't fall. If you stumble, you're going to stand on your foot. So you don't have. And then he said, "If that happens, we can't fix it anymore. Then we are going to take your leg." So you have to rely on other people. And if you're a quarterback, and and your line is full of holes. How good are you going to be? You better have some feet, man. If you ain't got wheels, you just got to be. You got now. You got to be quicker than the D lineman, and you got to be quicker than the linebacker. And by the time you get to the secondary, man, you're already tired because all you've been doing is running all day. And so, if you're building a business, you got to learn to trust. You got to learn to rely. You have to learn to teach every moment. And don't let go of the dream. I talk a lot about me and my wife. Sometimes we would race to the mailbox to see if there was going to be a check in there so we could make payroll. and you know what? We ran the business right. We didn't spend a bunch of money. We never borrowed any money other than from retirement accounts. So I think we did it the right way, but we also relied on one another. So get people around you who you trust and, yeah, who got your back.
Yeah, a good support system goes a long way for sure. So,
Yeah.
Jim, the last thing I wanted to ask you too, I know you have the Grampion podcast, but between podcasts and writing books, where do you find time to do all this?
Um, you know, in May I'm going to be 66 years old, and I think that this retirement that we have kind of choreographed in America is probably not for me. I actually I would take a page out of the Mike Rowe book and say I actually enjoy work because of the satisfaction that I get from the work itself. And my work now is to help people and to impact people and in some cases change lives. And if you can do that, and you can drive satisfaction and you can make a shilling or two while you're doing it, it's pretty awesome. I mean, why why would I want to slow down, man? I want to speed up. I got a lot of I've been accused of having a big audacious life, and I'm like, right on, bring it.
So the Grampian podcast, right, that you do,
Yeah.
what do you talk about on there? What type of show is it? How can listeners out here tonight follow Jim Tracy?
Sure. Best way is to watch a show is probably on YouTube. Although YouTube shadow banned me on one of my recent podcasts, so I guess I've arrived. But yeah, it's the Grampion, Grampion, thegrampion.com, or just search Jim Tracy on YouTube, and it'll get you there. And yeah, I sure appreciate you having me on, man. This is really cool. If they want to find the book, just go on Barnes and Noble or wherever you buy books. You can pre-order the book at barnesandnoble.com. Just look for Building Men by Jim Tracy.
Yeah, and I'll make sure I post it. I posted it all week on the social media outlets. I'll do it again tonight here before I hit the hay. But Jim, this was awesome. Like I said, this was completely outside of my comfort zone. Normally, I'm the guy talking local sports or college football, and
Yeah.
this was really cool to get some time to spend it with you. And I'm fascinated by your background and everything you bring, your motivation. I'm glad I found you.
All right. Well, Coach, thank you, man. And don't ever underestimate the impact that you guys who are coaches can have on those young minds, because they can decide to be winners when you convince them that it's not about the score on the it's not about the score on the board at the end of the game. It's about the character that you walk when you're 66. Like if you can walk away and go, hey, more often than not, I try to do the right thing. Just do the right thing.
I appreciate that, Jim. I'll continue to follow you. Thanks, my man. Appreciate the night.
All right. Thank you. And thank your audience. Have a great one.
Awesome. Thank you.
Bye bye.
So that was Jim Tracy, and I'm. It's so funny. Let me switch this over here. How I found Jim, I got hooked up behind the scenes on another platform, and when I reached out to Jim, he jumped right on and said he'd be more than happy to jump on with me here tonight. So this is completely new for me, Beyond the Game, the podcast. I have another guest coming on in a couple weeks. He's an author of a sports book called Out of Bounds. He talks a lot about high school sports. I'll post that up next week so you can learn a little bit about him. And then another guest after that was a longtime coach in the NBA, general manager in the NBA, a lot of NBA coaching experience. So we'll talk to him too. So it'll be fun here on the Beyond the Game. So I want to make sure I thank everybody for following this show, for following the Mohawk Valley Sports Watch, for following all the shows here on the Rock Pile Podcast. I really appreciate that. Go on YouTube, subscribe, share it. I'm going to try to work on growing the YouTube channel. I've done a great job on Facebook with everybody following the different shows, so I want to turn my attention to YouTube. But I hope everybody enjoyed tonight. Catch it on Spotify, iHeartRadio, Apple Podcast for podcast listeners, and Facebook, YouTube, all the social media outlets, if you want to follow on those platforms as well. So I appreciate everybody's time tonight. Stay tuned for the next Mohawk Valley Sports Watch. If I don't talk to you the rest of the week, happy Easter. Be safe, be careful, and thanks for tuning in.